Yeah, in 67, a little Sparks drum corps, 68 becoming a Vanguard, and 71 winning VFW National.
If we win while we're doing it, yeah, I'm happy. If we lose, I'm unhappy, but I'm not gonna beat my head against the wall.
The name Vanguard came from the kids. They chose that name, which of course means, you know, a leader in an activity, a field or whatever, the vanguard of the fighting force or whatever. The kids made that choice. That's what they, in 67, when they changed from the Sparks. And that was kind of like the word, you know, that was always in everybody's mind, is that we want to be the vanguard of the activity, whatever that takes.
In the spring of 1967, a small group of volunteer parents, their enthusiastic children, and a passionate music educator named Gail Royer formed the Santa Clara Vanguard Drum and Bugle Corps.
The Sparks wanted to just stay a local drum and bell corps and not get too involved. He didn't have the vision of becoming any larger. And Gail wanted to be a large drum and bugle corps. He wanted to compete against the people back east.
And so essentially Gail had this dream that he wanted to start this drum corps. And so he approached Mr. Elliott and the people that were sort of the key players in the Drum Sparks.
So on March 6, 1967, it was a booster club meeting for the Sparks. It was at Lakeview School in Sunnyvale, and they met. A few of us went to the school because we knew something was up. And so we couldn't go into the booster meeting, but about 12 of us were on the outside, and about halfway through the meeting, Gail walked out of the door, and the parents came with him. And right at that time, we knew that we were no longer the Sparks. We were going on our own. So we took our corps jackets off, we turned them inside out, and we put them on.
You know, the old black and white jackets, I still have my jacket in there, was Sparks, and so the middle letter was A. So all of us peeled everything off except for the A. And so it said A Drum and Bugle Corps until we had this very important meeting to decide the name.
Insisting that Santa Clara be attached to the front of the name Vanguard, Gail Royer and his small but dedicated group of young men and women began the journey, with personal financial assistance from parents and members' dues of 25 cents per week.
The first year in 67, I think we kind of were learning everything, and the guys that had already been in the activity, you know, were coming along, but we were just novices at that point.
Everybody was kind of sad about it, on the kids' level. You know, we were all, you know, heartbroken because it was, you know, this breaking up of all this stuff that we were doing. We didn't know what was going to happen next.
We were getting beat everywhere. You know, it didn't start out as a big winning experience, but it was a good learning experience.
Gail knew he could write and knew he could teach horns, but he wanted to make sure he got talent to do the visual in the percussion.
In 67, hired these two guys that were, had recently moved out of Casper, Wyoming, went down and taught the Kingsmen one year, and convinced them to come up for like $50 a month or something, some ridiculous number like this. And that was, of course, Pete and Fred.
Childhood friends from the ages of 12 and 13, Pete Emmons and Fred Sanford had formed a winning combination, both as members of the Casper, Wyoming Troopers and instructors of the Anaheim Kingsmen Drum and Bugle Corps.
I was teaching the Anaheim Kingsmen along with Fred Sanford, and we had a standstill, I think it was like in Lakewood, Southern California, and Gail Royer was then a judge. And he came down to judge the standstill. And I met him then, and Fred and I both met him, and he asked if we were interested in teaching, as he said, this little corps I've got up in Northern California, that is going to start, just started this year, and I would like you guys to come up and teach next year.
And they then became the core staff was Gail teaching the brass and writing the brass stuff, Fred doing the percussion thing, and Pete did all the marching, all the color guard, everything.
The thing was, we struck up such an interesting relationship because really there was somewhat, you know, the need for each other. Obviously, everybody had their expertise, and of course, you know, Pete and I were just developing ours, and I think Gail kind of sensed that we were potentially could be very good, and so he was kind of there to at least, you know, help foster that whole area.
We were like college buddies. We went everywhere together, did everything together, and everything evolved around the Vanguard.
They were the ones who brought in, you know, you want to just be the best you can be. You know, you always improve on what you're doing. You know, use yourself as a gauge.
Or 12 or 18. On your first count of mark time, you turn the head to the center and dress the line.
1968 was probably a critical year because it changed. That was the first year we actually went on a tour. And that's when the San Jose State guys came in and the size increased and we started getting the confidence that we had.
We did Procession of the Nobles for the first time, and it was different. It was, you know, playing a concert on the field.
You know, that was actually the thing that really hooked me on doing it, was he said, this is what I want to play for an opener. And he played Procession of the Nobles. And it was like, wow, what a great piece of music.
'69, again, you're still talking about having the same people together. So now a lot of us had 4 years of drum corps, and the staff was coming together. Gail was learning more about the writing that he was doing. The Booster Club was becoming a little bit stronger, and the organization was just growing.
1969, the Corps was actually quite good, but didn't get any recognition because nobody kind of knew what to do with us. Here's this upstart organization from California, and they're coming back there playing all this serious stuff, you know, for then, Procession of the Nobles, stuff like that.
And the first show, we lost to the Norwood Park Imperials by like 6 points. And clearly we were the better drum corps, but nobody had ever heard of us. The next night, we went to Streeter, Illinois. The same corps that had beaten us by whatever, 6 or 10 points, we beat by like 10 points and almost won the show. And the judges were saying, God, nobody told me they were any good. Like, well, come on, I mean, you can't decide for yourself that we're good.
At that time, we were starting to get a reputation for being very unique.
But I think with just his selections of music, it had a lot to do in the beginning with the growth of the Corps and the expansion of the Corps so fast, because it was, at that time, some unique stuff that we were playing.
He was unwieldy, and it made us play more emotionally. He took things, emotions, and expression out of us just because of his personality. And a lot of what I do from an emotional level is certainly an extension of Gail Royer.
And we'd actually had quite a surprisingly successful tour in 1970. We actually started beating people and becoming recognized as this kind of phenom drum corps coming out of California.
We were marching well. You know, Pete had the whole marching thing down, and we had a really good color guard, and we obviously had the drum thing down with Fred, and people were coming in with good talent. And so we took it on as a big quest to win nationals in '70.
In what would become a controversial year, The Corps had won its first contest mid-season against the Troopers. With momentum under its young belt, the members and staff of the Vanguard looked forward to a championship showdown at the VFW contest in Miami, Florida. Unfortunately, due to budget constraints, the Corps was only able to attend the American Legion Championships in Portland, Oregon, where it won its first national title.
So we went to Portland, where they were holding the American Legion National Championship.
We weren't, oh man, you know, pouting over we couldn't go to Miami. No way. We were just savoring those victories that we won.
I can remember Pete saying to us, what you have here is you have a chance to, in the next 30 minutes, be the best at what you do in the country.
Just got bigger and better and bigger and better. We kept the same nucleus. By the time we got to 71, here we had, you know, half the Corps that had been in drum corps, in the same drum corps, for 5, 6 years, and we were dependent on each other. We were confident with each other.
They weren't as militaristic, they weren't as edgy, they weren't as mean. It was this flowing, beautiful, magical organization that played music that nobody else played, that played music in a way that nobody else played, that marched these Pete Emmons drills. The whole thing was just this pure, magical thing.
By 1971, which was actually the final year of the VFW concept of national competition prior to DCI, we won our first national championship in Dallas. So that kind of was probably the first year that really started to put Santa Clara on the map from a national standpoint.
And that just stunned everybody, most of all us.
To beat them was a good feeling.
I mean, the Corps has only been around for, you know, a tiny amount of time. And we were beating Corps that had been around already for 20 and 30 years.
'72 was probably our first really successful year.
That was a very good year. I mean, that was the first year we got the new uniforms.
You know, I had the V on me before any, you know, I mean, all the old guys, Dave Lucian and Deventer, we had the V on first. You know, we had the hats. I mean, you know.
I think bringing home a Vanguard uniform and hanging it on in my room was for me, marching the Corps was just the most important thing that ever could happen.
We went almost undefeated. I think we had a tie with the Blue Stars or something like that. We also started to merge as, you know, using Broadway show music. Fiddler on the Roof this was now kind of in our themes early on there.
I remember the first day they taught the bottle dance, because they've got the girls down on the ground, you know, with the arms up, you know all the sexist boys. Jesus. Needless to say, did we know that that would be one of the most incredible trademarks in the early years the organization ever made.
Anyway, we come into nationals the first year of DCI at Whitewater, pretty much the heads-on favorite.
We ended up not only not in first place, but ended up in third place. We got beat by the Kingsmen, who won the first championship, and the Blue Stars. It was a disappointing year in that sense, but it was a landmark year in terms of what the Corps looked like and sounded like, and there really wasn't anybody close. but nonetheless, there was so much camaraderie within the Corps that the only thing that the 72 defeat that started that did is it exploded the Vanguard into the next probably 3 years or 4 years of dominance that, that very rarely matched since then.
The 73 show was so complex and the horn players were so good that we almost won by default because we played the Young Person's Guide for the first time. Nobody had ever done a two-tempo thing like that on the field. Knowing I was part of this thing, this unknown little bunch of people in California that were able to change an activity that had been established for a long time and make it way better.
Marching the Vanguard was like experiencing the possibility that anything could happen. We could win at any time. We could come up with a show that nobody has seen at any time. We could play something you would never imagine. We knew at the time somehow that what we were doing was pivotal.
Goal is this dream that Gail had and turn it into a national champion, into a world champion. You know, everything that's involved in that. To see those kids grow that much from plodding down the street, to achieve what they achieved was absolutely phenomenal.
You know, and I think for a lot of people that didn't go on into music, Gail taught life's expression. You know, how to express yourself as a person to a lot of people.